So today is a very special episode. This is an interview with Melissa. And Melissa's going to share a little bit about what her experience is being autistic, getting diagnosed, and the struggles that she went through and faced. So, Melissa, thank you so much for being willing to be on the podcast to begin with. I really do appreciate that. It's really cool to be able to have different voices on this podcast. So, I really do appreciate that.
Of course. Thank you for having me. Thank you for doing this for autistic people. I'm excited to listen to the rest of the podcast and future episodes. So thank you.
Thanks. So, to get started, when were you diagnosed autistic? And was it hard if you got diagnosed later in life? Was it difficult or was it a shock to recognize that?
So just a heads up, I was able to preview these questions beforehand, so I'm just going to read the response that I came up with and then speak from that.
Go for it.
Yeah, so it's been very isolating and full of self-doubt. So many of my quote unquote issues or the reasons behind why my family would ask, why are you like that, is because of undiagnosed autism. So I'm self-identified, working with an autistic and ADHD therapist. She's gung ho that I am, but I need that official diagnosis. And so to continue, I don't have the best memory, but from what I can look back on in early childhood slash preschool, elementary days, is me being problematic. I would cry out of confusion, frustration, lack of understanding, and I also remember being excluded from other kids groups, or if I was included, I was given like a special position, or I wasn't really in the group. I was just, around.
That must have been really rough, especially just dealing with that constantly from such a young age.
Yeah, and that's where I say I don't have the best memory because it's like when I'm viewing it as a person observing it because obviously the person that developed out of that is me. And so now I can mask and I mean, I won't say I'm in the group, but instead I'm just the quiet person or the person that, goes home immediately after instead of one that's crying out of confusion and yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of unfortunate stigma surrounding autism where it's almost like a lot of people don't know masking exists. It's like if you don't look stereotypically autistic, that you can't be, which is always really frustrating when people say things like that. Um,
Yes.
when you got your diagnosis, was it like an aha moment? Like, oh my God, I finally understand my entire life? Or was it more of
Um,
like kind of a negative thing, like, oh, this sucks?
so I'm not officially diagnosed, but when I first um kind of for sure felt I am autistic. Yes, it was first. I think I went through like the stages. I don't want to say the stages of grief, but a few stages of like, whoa. I thought everyone was like this too. Oh, it's a certain group of us, but it makes so much sense why I did some of the things I did and why I felt the way I felt for my entire life. And then it went to anger. Like, how did the adults around me not know this was normal? I mean, they were seeing other children exclude me. My mom heard me come home crying, saying, I just want friends. So I definitely went through anger and like, how different would my life be if I was diagnosed as a child and I got support, you know, anything, just
Yeah.
resources. So yeah, I want to say that it was an aha. And for me, I'm not one of those people that's like, I hope I'm not autistic. I do believe I am autistic. An official diagnosis would help me feel like I could say it to anyone if need be, but it just makes my life make sense. So I guess in a way I was grateful to find out.
Yeah. Instead of just thinking that you're weird or broken or something like that for your whole
Yes,
life. Finally, you
yes.
find a reason
Broken.
for it, and it's like, oh, wait, there's other people like me? Wow. I thought
Yeah,
I was the only one in the entire world like this.
yeah.
It's a very isolating experience sometimes to be able to live like that, especially as a kid who can't always express that.
Exactly. It's I think some of the things that, why I developed a mask and why I'm pretty high masking now or can be is because I didn't understand why people were saying I shouldn't do the things I did. So I just found a way to shut it down, but I'm just like that's a lot to unpack in therapy at a future date because it's like how does a
Yeah.
child And someone's basically saying to you, a helpless child, figure out how to make this work with no resources, no help. It's just, you shouldn't be doing this. So,
Yeah.
not good, not good. Yeah.
Especially with all the stigmas around stimming and stuff like that.
Yes.
So, do you have any stims? Do you have stims that you prefer more than others? And did you ever, before realizing you were autistic, stim around other people and then face a ton of social backlash for it?
Um, I think for me, my biggest sim, and it's not one that I've heard often. In fact, before I thought I was autistic, I had joined a subreddit called compulsive skin picking. So I pick my lips and I pick my feet, and it is something that I remember being told. Like my dad, he is no longer a nurse, but years ago he was a nurse, and he was like, "You're gonna get an infection, your lip is gonna fall off." So big one for me is skin picking, but also I love hearing music. I love like feeling the vibrations of music. I like
Yes.
moving to it, spinning, singing, which for me is making the vibrations. It's singing, which is nice, but it's also, making the vibrations in my throat.
Yeah.
I'm sure I have some others, but yeah, I think that I've always stemmed around other people, like my family. As I got older, do it less in public settings. Like I won't. I work from home, but we have a lot of meetings with our cameras on. I'm not gonna pick my lips in the meeting. It looks like I'm picking my nose sometimes too, so
Yeah.
I'm aware of that, and yeah.
So you felt comfortable just being yourself naturally around your family, stimming or doing whatever you needed to do. You didn't ever feel uncomfortable in that scenario?
No, I mean my family, we all have quirks. I'll just say that I am not qualified to diagnose anyone else, but like, yeah, behind the closed doors of our home, I could be as weird as I wanted to be, honestly. It was more just how it impacted my public life, like school or
Yeah.
later work. So yeah.
Do you think your parents or maybe other people in your family might be neurodivergent? It's often very common for family members or even cousins sometimes to be neurodivergent if even one person is.
Yes,
And
absolutely. I do think so.
and then they think that everything you do is normal because they're the same way.
Yeah, I've been told that. Okay. I'm gonna share this. It's difficult for me, but I told a close family member when I like 3 years ago, back when I first was reading everything about autism and saying, "This is me. This is me." I, I like to organize things, so I typed up a little summary of why. I included sources, and I sent it to them, and they were just like, "No, I don't think you're autistic. You're just dealing with normal stress."
Normal
And at the
stress.
time, that literally crushed me, but now I just laugh about
Jeez.
it, like, and that person, they deal with their own difficulties, and so I feel bad that like I wish I could share this with them and it could help things make sense, but they're still stuck in the this is normal and
Yeah. You know, a
trying to
lot of
break it
people
down.
aren't receptive about it and you can try to explain it from your point of view and then they suffer with the same thing as you but aren't willing to
Yeah.
acknowledge that it's not something that's neurotypical like sensory overload, certain fabrics that just make you feel physical pain sensations. Do you have anything
Yes.
like that where like you can't wear a
Yeah.
certain fabric?
There's certain fabrics that I touch, and oftentimes, like, I'm a bag lady. I have bags, like I have an anxiety bag for when I'm having a panic attack. I have all kinds of bags. Some of my bags just have a really weird texture. I haven't pinned it down, and I guess I need to figure out what that material is. But I hate it. I hate it. It makes me feel like I'm sick, like something is
Yikes.
going on in my fingers. And then one of the big sensory things for me is bright fluorescent lights. That, when you say
Oh
certain
my
things
god,
hurt,
yeah.
for me, that's light. Yeah, that's bright fluorescent light. I just,
Same. Do you ever get headaches from them?
I'm gonna say that I'm not the best at determining where my pain comes from, but I'm often uncomfortable and in discomfort, so possibly.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes like I'll if there's a bright fluorescent light, if I walk into another room, I'll get these I call them lightning headaches, where it feels like you're being shot by lightning for like 5 to 10 seconds and then they go away. And it always is
Um,
triggered by lights. Nothing else.
yeah. I think I feel fortunate that where I live, my partner is diagnosed ADHD, and there's a lot of things that he doesn't get personally, as in he doesn't experience them, but he understands and is now like my warrior. So I don't really have to deal with bright lights anymore.
Nice. That's awesome.
There's a few times where he likes light to be able to see, and he's like, "I think you have better eyesight than me because you can see in the dark." And I'm just like, "Can't can't function in the light, so I have to see in the dark."
Yep.
But yeah,
I've had that conversation before with my husband. It's kind of
yeah.
funny. Did you ever have a scenario where you were totally comfortable in the lighting and then someone comes in and just turns on all the lights at once? No warning, like frequently?
Yes, I would say that probably happened a lot when I was living with my family.
Yep.
Now we actually have a warning. It's like, watch your eyes, or my boyfriend will be like, can I turn on, the bright kitchen lights? And I'm like, sure, but I'm also getting up to leave. But,
Yeah, just
so
wait for me to leave.
yeah, I think fortunately for me, not fortunately, but there's a before time and an after time. Before I suspected I'm autistic and after. And so I'm sure stuff like that happened before a lot, but I never pieced it together, right? I'm just having bright lights on is normal. Staring at a bright white screen all day is normal. And then I discovered dark mode before, so I
Yeah.
started coming up with kind of my own little accommodations, but it's like I don't even remember what it's like to deal with those things. I work from home. I'm a homebody. I go to the library and I go to a few places, but basically I can control my environment, and that has made a huge difference.
Gosh, that's incredible. I hope to get to that point. I'm in office every day right now, so every single day it's just bright fluorescent
Um,
lighting in every single room. Luckily, they have a
yeah,
dark room that I go to often, but it's tough. It's really tough because you don't want to feel uncomfortable in these situations, but there's nothing you can do about it. It just happens. And I think what a lot
and a
of
lot of
people just don't understand, it's not like we're afraid of lights or afraid of sounds. It triggers a physical pain response in
yes,
the brain. It is
yes.
us being in pain.
And a lot of us, especially those of us who have learned to mask it, becomes like I was saying. I'm sure it happened a lot to me before. You may have a meltdown at the end of the day and not realize it's because you sat in the bright lights all
Yeah.
day and you dealt with people coming into your space, interrupting your flow. Like, it's
Yeah.
all my sympathies for working in the office. I really hope you can, if you'd like to work from home or work in a different environment, I hope you can
Thanks.
find that as soon as possible.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's tough because when you're so high masking, you sometimes what happens is people recognize that and they actually, in a lot of cases, prefer the mask. And that's when it's really damaging because then it's like people only like me when I'm masking. Does anyone like me when I'm not masking? And I feel like it's really important to have at least a couple people in your life who you can feel comfortable not masking around for your own health, mental health.
Yeah, I would say that's one of the things that I'm going to go ahead and speak for all autistic people, but I think that's really important for survival, just like as a human being. To not be able to be yourself anywhere is soul crushing. And yes, I think that we all need people that we can be ourselves around. And especially if it's people that get it, like my boyfriend. Just another example of he may not always experience it himself. He believes me when I'm able to vocalize what I'm experiencing. And then he takes it on as something that he watches out for. Like, he watches out for the lights.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, I think that every autistic person deserves that.
I'm so glad to hear that you have someone like that. It makes such a huge difference to have a support system.
Yes. Yes.
So, do you think that being autistic ever made it kind of difficult for you to connect to your culture?
Yeah, so I'll read my next little paragraph. Yes. I'm Black American on one side, but I also have family from Africa on the other side. Being a little vague about the specific region and country, just to not make me so easily identifiable, but it's not a big deal to me. But always felt too different for both worlds. So like Black American culture and we'll just say African culture. But I've always identified with the misfits. So fortunately, I feel fortunate that I grew up in the West because U.S. has a large
Demographic?
diversity and like the types of people. They're weirdos accept everyone, and I. It's not that I hate to use that word, but that is a word I claim for myself. Like I'm a weirdo, and so even if I'm just sitting next to the other weirdos or I'm seeing them on TV, like that kind of feels like my culture, the underworld of the weirdos. But I am also beginning to realize that some of the struggles that I have trying to fit in with my culture is probably due to being autistic. So it's not just a cultural thing. It's an autistic thing.
Yeah. Did you ever have like pretty bad unsolicited comments from either people of your race or people not of your race questioning why you were speaking the way you were or anything like that?
Yeah. I will say, fortunately, I've not had a lot of comments from people not of my race. And I'm not saying that that doesn't happen. I'm sure it does. Or it probably they don't affect me as much, is what I will say. But yes, I've had comments from other Black Americans where, like, especially as a kid, I mean, people are like just blunt when they're children, like, "What's wrong with you?" And one person called me a that, which it's not a nice memory, but he was a child, and so I will not hold that against him wherever he is. But yes, unsolicited comments. People know you're weird. People, even now when I mask, people can tell there's something different about me. I've just gotten to the point now where it's like I no longer care to fit in. There's a saying, the opposite of fitting in is belonging, and it's like I don't have a lot of energy to socialize. I want friends. I want the weirdos to come hang in my backyard and me play with plants and stare at the moon. But
That sounds like
unless that
so
happens,
much
or
fun, unironically. Like,
does.
how come more people don't want to just lay in the grass and stare at the moon?
I think that they are out there. We are out there. But the problem is the rest of life is so exhausting. It takes energy to, keep in touch with someone semi regularly at least and plan like, okay, every third Tuesday we lay in the backyard. So I do
Every
think
third Tuesday.
that I think that there are a lot of us, but it's just
This is extra funny
draining.
to me because I hang out with my other friend every Tuesday, specifically Tuesday, who's also
Perfect.
potentially autistic, and that's just really funny to me that you just picked Tuesday.
Honestly, that's what I want. That sounds ideal. A friend that's like not gonna get offended and not gonna be like that's weird to say this is our day that we hang out.
Yeah,
And we're flexible to canceling, but there's no expectation to do more unless we both
exactly.
agree
Yeah,
to it.
it's
Yeah.
pretty great, honestly. I
Yeah.
think every
Very nice.
autistic person should try to find someone like that.
Yes.
So on a slightly different topic, were you ever bullied in school? Did you ever have any really frustrating situations where you felt excluded and bullied because you're autistic?
Yeah. Probably a lot of snippets of memories, but again, I am detached from that. I don't know if it's in a healthy way, but yes, I was excluded from friend groups. I was literally went through the whole "you can't sit with us at the lunch table." People just like autistic kids don't always dress, like the other kids, or they're not always so concerned with their appearance. So definitely getting bullied for that. And then yeah, just the exclusion. I think as a little girl, it was the exclusion more so than like someone you know outright beating me up or shoving me around or anything overtly violent.
Yeah. How do you think that exclusion affected you in your development?
um, I definitely want to say it stunted my social development, but now as an adult, I think probably I am still stunted socially. I feel like I've made peace with it. Like I no longer feel like I have to fix myself and do all the right things to have the perfect group of like five friends and
That's awesome.
go to the bar every week. Like I don't have to do that. I currently don't really socialize with anyone outside of my family and boyfriend, so that probably isn't ideal, and I would like to change it. But again, it's got to happen organically because I'm just too exhausted to work for it anymore.
Yeah, and it's so tough because you want friends, but
Yes.
whenever you try to meet new people, you just get rejected for just being the way that you are.
Yeah.
When you get
It's a
that, for a
ghosting.
lifetime. Oh, I hate ghosting so much.
Uh,
I could create a 1 hour podcast on how much I hate ghosting, but basically, like, if you're an adult and you ghost someone, then you have the social skills of like a child, straight up.
the crazy thing is that seems to be completely accepted by neurotypical people. They may not be happy about it, but like they're like, yeah, I've done it and I do it and it happens, and it's like tell the person don't want to, you can't anymore or whatever. Like
Yeah,
I had a
seriously.
friend yeah, right before the pandemic, and I do want to reach out to her again because we had a good time. I'm thinking she might be neurodivergent if not autistic. Basically right before the pandemic started, I was swamped with school assignments, and so I just messaged her and I was like, hey, we used to go to there's a dog bar in our town, so like the dogs
That's
play at the
cute.
dog park and there's a bar, and they would have trivia every night of the week. So I just told her like it's I won't be able to go to trivia anymore. I'm swamped with schoolwork, but I'll get in touch afterwards. And then the pandemic happened, and it's 3 years later. But I did intend to get back in touch. It's just we couldn't
Yeah.
socialize for a while, and then I really got out of the habit of it. So
Yeah. And I think there's also a huge difference between, people having struggles with responding because of something like ADHD or autism
yeah,
compared to neurotypical people just making the choice, oh, I'm not going to respond because I am afraid or because I don't feel like it's worth it. Like, at least give someone closure, straight up.
exactly. That's what I was gonna say. Is I at least I felt like I closed the chapter of like I can't hang out
Yeah.
because of school,
Yeah,
and
that's
then
awesome that you told her, hey, I have a bunch going on. I might not be able to respond, stuff like that. I really appreciate it when people do that because then you've set the expectation, like, hey, I'm going through
yes.
XYZ. And then there's like this understanding of, okay, we're still friends even if we haven't talked in a while, too.
I think that, and I do think that if I reached out to her, we could get together. And so yeah, I think the difference between when an autistic, ADHD, or other neurodivergent person does it and a neurotypical person does it is, yeah, there's no closure and there's no consideration for the other person. If someone's like, "Hey, are we still getting together for coffee?" and you just don't say anything ever again, that's horrible. Just
Yeah,
say I
it is.
can't do coffee. Like,
Yeah, exactly. And I mean,
yeah.
barring special circumstances, of course, but
Yes, of course.
in general, like, did it really take you 3 months to respond to my text about do you want to go to this concert that is your favorite band? Like, come on.
Yes. Yeah.
Seriously, like, it's just really annoying.
Yeah. But I think we're accustomed to doing the hard work, right? It's not easy. Basically go to someone and say, I can't do this thing anymore. And maybe you explain why or maybe you don't, but it is difficult to force yourself to do that. Nobody wants to do it. I think maybe a lot of autistic, or I'll speak for myself. Sometimes I feel like I have to do it. Like, how could I just leave someone
Like a
hanging?
moral
But
responsibility.
yes,
Yeah,
exactly. And I
yeah,
think that um, sometimes neurotypical people don't hold themselves to those rules as strongly as we do.
definitely. Definitely. So, what is something you wish that people knew about autism?
Get into my okay, here's my response, my written response, and then we can elaborate. I wish that people realize that autistic people are as varied as allistic people. There is no one way to look or sound autistic. A lot of high masking adults were once children with no masks. Their problems were seen as an inconvenience to others that had to be rectified, and thus it led to them developing their masks.
Definitely.
Solution. Yeah, it's a solution that benefits those around the autistic person, but can often harm the autistic person over time. And that's definitely like firsthand experience of like that is why we don't know why we're masking or how we're masking or how to unmask because we had to learn to develop the mask from nothingness at a young age. And that's I can't
Literally for
imagine that's good for any
survival.
person. Yes. Yeah.
Because if you don't mask, well, enjoy the next 13 people excluding you from whatever the next thing is. Like,
And you get more labels. You it's just the way people talk about autistic people that aren't able to mask, that aren't verbal. It's all from the perspective of how it inconveniences their parents or the people around them or society. And it's like, have you ever stopped to consider how difficult it is for them in this world that only looks at them and sees an inconvenience. It's
Yeah. And I think
yeah.
a lot of people who believe stuff like that don't even realize how many autistic
No.
people have changed the fabric of society. Because when you're bored all the time and you have, less dopamine or less dopamine receptors or anything related to that, you get shit done because
Yes.
it gives you dopamine to get things done, whereas everyone else gets the dopamine from socializing. So
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people have so much internalized ableism that they really truly don't even know A, how many people around them are probably autistic, and B, the significant contributions autistic people have made to society.
Yes. Just to give a pop culture reference, because this kind of stunned me. My therapist told me about this, but Eminem, the rapper, is autistic.
Oh,
He
wow,
has
that's
not
cool.
only said it like in public, he's made songs about it. But you never hear it. Like that to me is a
I've never
huge
heard of
name.
that, and I've heard of Eminem
Yeah.
before, and I've heard of Eminem
Hmm.
mentioning people mentioning Eminem before. That's really interesting.
Yep. And there's other big names. I think there's someone. This is gonna sound terrible. I don't know anything about sports, but it was either a basketball player or a football player who recently came out as either autistic or neurodivergent, and it's just, it gets a little blurb here and there, but like in everyday society, people aren't thinking this amazing person who I idolize or who's famous or who's rich is also autistic, and they maybe their talents, their abilities, were able to develop them
Yeah, like
better
a
because
hyper
they are
focus.
autistic. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so on the topic of masking, what exactly does masking look like for you from what you've been able to determine so far?
Yes, I'm looking for my response.
Like for me, when I mask, I used to smile all the time, even at home, even alone. I would always be smiling constantly, and it was kind of rough, honestly.
Yeah, that sounds extreme, and I only say that in sympathy. Like, I'm sorry that that's what masking does to people. That's the harm. Like, that's
Yeah, it totally
um,
messed up, gave me jaw pain for 20 years.
uh,
And so one day I'm like, once I figured it out, I'm like, it's not worth it. I'm not going to put myself in pain just to appease other people like this. Like, this is
yes,
bullshit.
yes, and that's what masking is. It is for other people. But here's my written response. So I struggle to sometimes determine when I'm masking and when I'm not. It feels like a subconscious change to me. Outwardly, I may be quiet and I'm in the smile and nod phase, but oftentimes I feel pretty empty inside when I'm masking. That is to say, I'm quiet because I truly feel I have nothing to say. I'm grinning and bearing it and hoping to just get out of the situation where I can relax again and not worry about controlling my reactions and my facial expressions, and my thoughts come back and my opinions come back. And it's so for me, I think masking is a compartmentalizing of myself, and then there's just like a shell that smiles and nods and does the right canned responses and sometimes doesn't, but for the most part, I think I've learned how to fake it.
Yeah, and it's frustrating we even have to. I mean,
Um,
I feel like it shouldn't be so difficult to say, hey, just so you know, I have a flat effect, which means my face doesn't respond the way you'd expect. It doesn't mean I'm not interested. It doesn't mean I'm not focused. Like, I feel like this should be common knowledge, and it's not at all.
yeah,
Not
because
only
again,
is it not, but then it leads to discrimination, even in things
yes,
like careers and stuff like that, too.
encounters with police. I mean, police officers are
Oh my god,
people,
I can't even
and
imagine that.
yeah,
That must be really
there's
tough for
a
you.
I've never had encounters with police. I'm just saying I've heard of like autistic people either having to carry a card or not, and the police officer thinks that, they're literally having a meltdown or they've shut down, and the police officer thinks they're not cooperating, so they're so much rougher with them, and it's just police
Yeah.
officers are people, like they respond emotionally, and if they're neurotypical and they're not thinking like maybe this person is just terrified to be in my presence, they're gonna take it as like insubordination and like okay, let me
Yeah.
put the cuffs on you. And so that does happen to autistic people. I fortunately have had minimal encounters with the police, nothing negative, but I know that I am fortunate. I'm not going to sit here and say that's the norm for all autistic people when they
Yeah.
interact with the police.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. So, on that note, what is something that neurotypical people don't understand about your behaviors or what you do or how you act that you'd like to shed light on?
Yeah. I have a shorter response for this. It was hard for me to answer this question honestly because it's like I am no longer thinking from the neurotypical perspective as much. But this is what I wrote. Yeah. Sorry, my brain was trying to figure out the words to say that. Okay, but so I would like neurotypical people to realize that oftentimes autistic and other neurodivergent people struggle with nonverbal communication or social expectations. It's just because, specifically in the example where it's easier for us to just be honest, just to be real, I find a lot of neurotypical people react negatively to this honesty. They instead read it as an affront to what they expect to see and hear in like a social setting. So it's like, oh, you can't say that, but it's the truth.
Definitely.
And you asked me the question, and now you're mad at me. And it's like,
Yeah.
it, yeah, a mask is for me, I don't want to say it's a lie, but it's something that you're not. And it's so much harder to remember that's something that you're not and keep up with it.
Yeah,
Sometimes the
like
mask slips.
remembering 2.5 seconds of eye contact and 2 seconds off.
Yes, yes. I
That's a
think I
shitty
intimidate
algorithm.
people with the stare down, but it's like I can either stare you down or I can not look you in the eye. And I
Yes.
find that I get more trouble for not looking you in the eye, so
Oh
it's
my
for me
god,
to say that.
yes.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely agree with you about the nonverbal communication. I found out literally last week, like not maybe even 4 days ago, that if you ask why to a neurotypical, then automatically that will trigger a feeling of judgment and a feeling of
Yes.
a negative response,
Offensiveness,
which is
yeah.
crazy. That literally it literally blew my mind. And I've been trying to talk to people and hear their perspectives on this stuff. That I mean, I have never in my life realized that. And I was always the person asking why this, why that, because I'm
Yeah.
curious, because I'm genuinely interested. But apparently, most neurotypicals will only use the why phrases when they're judging you for something. So, like if you say, why do women like makeup? I don't wear makeup because of sensory issues. I would really like to understand why do women like it. I was hoping to get some personal anecdotes and stuff like that. The
Yeah, so
responses
for
from something like that were so negative. It was ridiculous. Like, this was on Reddit. I was downvoted
yeah.
so much. Everyone was like, "You're a misogynist," and started assuming I was the guy who posted the original post. It was a shit show. And I don't really
Yeah.
care about downvotes, but what I found was interesting is that in a way, Reddit and other social sites like this kind of reflects society a lot.
Yes.
And I couldn't believe it because to me, to just say, why do people like makeup is such a neutral question. Like, I would have never assigned any negative thing to that at all. If someone said, hey, you used to have short hair, why do you like short hair? Or why do you have short hair? Or, for me, almost all information is neutral until proven otherwise. And it was shocking to realize neurotypical people do not operate that way at all.
Yeah, I've never sat down and thought about that, but now that you say it, there's a reason why like I'm very comfortable asking my boyfriend why on so many things. Very comfortable asking him like hypotheticals, and let's just say hypothetically I wanted to build this thing, how would I do it? And he's like, well, it's not possible. And then I'm like, can I do this? Can I so I have always been like within my inner circle kind of allowed to ask why.
Yeah,
Even
me
my
too.
mom tells yeah, my mom tells me the story of so she grew up, parents from the silent generation, like they were all about children should be seen and not heard, that stuff. My mom, she was every generation is usually a little bit more loose with how they rear children. So I guess my brother and I, we were little, asking my mom a bunch of questions, and my grandma was like, "Why do you let them talk back to you so much?" And she's like, my mom was like, "They're not talking back to me; they're just curious." But now that
Exactly.
anecdote makes sense. Like my grandma saw it as disrespect,
Yeah, she
or
totally did.
yeah, and my mom was just like, "No, it's fine. I support fostering their curiosity," and
That's so
there's like,
interesting. That's such an interesting dynamic to see between your mom and your grandma.
yeah, yep.
So for me,
um,
my mom is definitely not autistic or ADHD or OCD. Like, she's
mm,
not. She is through and through allistic. And
mm,
as a result, I would ask her these questions like in middle school. She would tell me, you have to make eye contact with people to show interest. She didn't tell me to take breaks.
yeah.
So I was that kid in middle school who would just stare at you for like 15 seconds. Like, I just didn't. And people started fearing me, I swear. Like, in high school, people were actually afraid of me. And I'm about as threatening as a golden retriever puppy. But
Oh,
when you get used to certain biases, a lot of people are biased against autistic people at such a
yes.
subconscious level that they don't even know it. They're not even consciously aware of it.
In fact, they're supported by social norms and saying there is something wrong with that person. Like,
Yeah.
so for everyone around you to fear you instead of to look within and say, what am I afraid of? And is
Yeah.
it,
They were so
is,
scared. One of the
yeah.
popular girls who was the most terrified of me put in my name for the end of like most likely to awards, and I won an award for it, most likely to take over the world. And I was just like, I don't know if you guys know me or not. Like, I don't know if this is a compliment or an insult, but it was
Well,
just
hey,
crazy.
I like that one because I think you could make it happen. I saw something on Reddit where there's a group of autistic people basically trying to create a separate autistic society.
Yeah,
So
I saw that, and I was wondering
obviously,
if that was even real. I kind of felt like it might be satire at first, but I wasn't sure.
and then my concern was like, we can get very intense with our opinions. What if, one group is like, we want to do it this way, and the other group is like, we can't do it that way, and then there's factions, and I'm like, well, that mirrors neurotypical society, so
Yeah.
that's fine. But I'm okay with us taking over the world. So you for world leader.
That's funny. So, from a societal perspective, what do you think society could do to make life easier for autistic people, like accommodations or even public knowledge, anything like that?
So this one I really love because I think about this a lot for not just autistic people, not just for neurodivergent people, but all marginalized people. So immigrants, undocumented people, LGBTQIA plus people, disabled people, other disabled people. And it to me is so simple. So I will start my written response. Live and let live. Um, and then I kind of went into me personally. I'm still determining what accommodations would best suit me, but overall, I would like to have my wishes respected. For example, if I'm not feeling up to going to family events or celebrating certain holidays, I would like not to have to feel the weight of all of my family's emotional responses and disappointment. Like, it should just be like, cool, you don't want to come? There's plenty of us. Just celebrate without you.
That's a good
And also to be
example.
yeah, and I've honestly started doing that. I'm not religious, but I did grow up Christian, but my family does like Christian and the secular commercialized aspect of Christmas. But I don't do Christmas anymore. And part of it for me was we're all adults. Like we don't have any young children in our immediate family. And it's just it makes our interactions on that day are so transactional. Well, what did you get me? And I got you this. And I started saying like we can do things together. I'm no longer about the whole buying the gifts and like my family buys a lot of gifts. It takes hours to go through gifts on Christmas morning, and I'm telling you, the youngest person there is 23 years old, so there are no children. But and it is a fun tradition, but I just can't do it anymore. And I think this year will
Yeah.
be my third Christmas that I still go over on Christmas Eve. I'm there to break bread and do the family time, but Christmas morning when it's just about the gifts, I just don't want to do it anymore. And at first they were very disappointed, and at first they were defensive, like, "Well, we're not going to stop doing gifts," and I was like, "I don't want you to." But
That's such
yeah,
a
it would
perfect
be
example of the kind of miscommunications that autistic people experience on a daily basis. Like, you say you
yes,
don't like something or you don't want to do something, and then everybody loses their entire minds thinking that means that you're saying that everyone in the world has to hate it. And it's like, no,
yeah,
I just stated I don't want to do this. but I'm
Yeah,
not.
the crazy thing is, yeah,
It's like,
I didn't even think about them not doing it. I never was like, I want them to stop. It
exactly.
was just like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so to continue, another thing I think that might help me is to be able to pursue my interests freely and with fervor, and to even have those around me willing to hear out what my interests are, even if
Yeah.
not their interests, which kind of goes back to what we were saying is like having that support, having people that you can just be yourself around. Like, my boyfriend geeks out about a ton of stuff that I wouldn't say is my interest, but just hearing someone like talk passionately about what they're interested in and being able to ask questions and get like info dump to me is like that's bonding, that's socializing.
Yeah.
So it'd be nice if we could do that everywhere. And I know sometimes there's issues with like the conversations last too long or one person is dominating. So I guess there has to be some regulation, but I don't think it has to be as strict as it is now.
Yeah. Like I got so used to spending time with my best friend that for a month or so I just forgot to mask around other people because we're both like the exact same. And we would both just
Perfect.
like if she wants to info dump for 20 straight minutes, I will just listen to her and support the heck out of her. And if
Yeah.
I want to info dump for 20 straight minutes, she lets me do it too. And it's honestly hilarious. Sometimes we'll start with talking about something and we'll end up at something so completely different and unrelated. Like I'm also pretty sure I also have ADHD and she's diagnosed ADHD. So we have conversations that would be impossible for anyone else to follow.
Yeah. I have conversations like that with my family, and in fact, I used to notice this about myself and stop myself, but it's kind of coming back. The whole interrupting people, which is like it happens all the time, talking with other neurodivergent people, and I've tried to stop myself just for the sake of the podcast being hearable, you know. But like at work, people do not like that. My boss was like, "Don't interrupt me," and I was just like, "But I know what you're gonna say, so I'm just getting to the next point in the conversation." And I do think there's some ADHD in me and my family as well, because our conversations are the same way. We also get loud and we get like impassioned, but we're never angry usually. We're just impassioned, like, "No, that's not right," and we're looking up sources and we're yeah,
Oh, that's
and that's
awesome.
enjoyable. Yeah.
That's how it should be.
And then, so just the last part of my written response, I really wanted to share this part. So, the main thing that I wish that society and neurotypical people would let all of us marginalized, differently abled, differently whatever people, in general, I wish the world would accept and meet all people where they are. Instead of sending a message that we must change or fix ourselves to fit an inequitably applied standard.
Definitely.
Basically, yeah, like live and let live. What you think is normal, or what, like, it's also, I think, a huge thing with control for neurotypical people. Like, they want to control what everyone around them does. And we probably want that too, but, like, outside of our families that are respecting and understanding, that never happens for us. We're pretty much told to fix ourselves, have no expectations of other people. Then the reverse is applied to us, where all the expectations are on us, and when we fail to meet them, it's like the end of the world. And
Yeah.
yeah,
And I think sometimes a lot of those expectations can actually create more mental illnesses. In my case, I
yeah,
developed OCD pretty bad. And I'm pretty sure it's because I had just so much expectations from such a young
hmm,
age. And I'm not saying I'm not appreciative of that because certainly those expectations pushed me to where I am now and I've done a lot with it. But at the same time, I think that a lot of anxiety disorders and a lot of OCD can be developed from not having the right support or being undiagnosed for so long.
yeah. And it's kind of insane that it develops also because there's so much that we have to remember and
Yeah.
be aware of and be constantly like it's like we're powering a ship by ourselves inside of our bodies. Like, okay, do this with your eyes, now do this with your mouth, and now look here, and don't fidget, and
Yeah, I told that to
yeah.
a neurotypical once and he was shocked. He's like, "You're thinking about how long to make eye contact?" And I was like, "Wait,
Yes.
you're not? Wait, hold up. Wait, you don't have to think about that?" What?
Yeah, sometimes I'm at the point when like I notice other people are looking away a lot. I'm like, no, you're not doing this right. We're supposed to stare at each other. Like, okay, so you looked away after 30 seconds. Well, now I can't look away. That's weird. So I'll just keep staring.
I
And
just keep saying. This is so true. Like different types of
that's
people, it's tough. Was it ever tough for you to see like this the social norms or to know they exist or to be able to did you ever question them a lot?
yeah, I think I'm fortunate that my mom is a person that works. She's not super social. As much as she can control it, she's not going to do the things that make her uncomfortable, like parties and those types of events. So I was fortunate that I think I took after her, and I've learned to just shed as much as I can of what I don't like to do in terms of expectations. So like
That's awesome.
I know there's certain places I'm not going to go, certain people I'm not going to interact with, and I think just again, I don't know if it comes from a healthy place, but I had to learn to stop caring what people thought. Like as a kid, I
Definitely.
cared about everything, and it that just wasn't sustainable. That's one of the things I had to stop doing to just survive. And so I think that helps me now. Sometimes I'm aware of it. Sometimes there are moments where it's like I'm uncomfortable or is this going to get me in trouble, but a lot of the time I like when I'm home again, I try to remind myself that's not a place I want to be a part of. That's not a group I want to be a part of. I
Yeah.
try to do that as much as possible.
Yeah. I honestly think that it would be doable and easy to bridge the gaps that in our society between neurotypical people and autistic people. But the problem is what that would require would be a lot of neurotypical people and looking at themselves and analyzing themselves and recognizing, oh my God, I didn't know I have a bias against people who don't make the exact amount of eye contact that I want. And that's something that, majority of people aren't even willing to do, to be able to look within and say, I might have bias somewhere. It's a tough thing, but a lot of people just won't do it.
Yeah, I think we are very introspective. I mean, at least for me, I think a lot. I spend a lot of time in my head. So I am analyzing what I'm doing,
Definitely.
what I'm thinking. I don't think that comes naturally for neurotypical people. So what it would almost involve is that they would have to go through what we go through. Now they would have to monitor all their behavior and thoughts and reactions. That is very difficult. That
Yeah.
is sometimes deadly for some people. If you can't do it, if you know, before we had societies, if you didn't fit in, you were dropped off in the woods, and that was death. Like
Yeah.
exclusion and isolation used to mean death, and it still can for some people. So I don't I think yes, they could do it. If we can do it, they can do it. But where's the incentive? There's so many more of them.
Exactly.
Most of them, when they are working in autistic spaces, it's again from that perspective of, well, how can we make these people less of an inconvenience? Or how can we get these people to change themselves so
Yeah.
they can fit in and be like us?
Or worse, all the mythology behind here's how I cured autism.
Oh my
Autism is not a
goodness.
disease and it does not need to be cured. Every time I see
Yeah.
anything related to curing autism, I just want to scream.
Yeah. That's and I really feel bad for like one of the benefits I feel not being diagnosed as a child. I don't know if this culture existed as much in the 90s, but like autistic parents that like will do anything to get their child to be quote unquote normal, like ABA therapy and just
They'll do anything except accepting their
yeah,
child for who they actually are.
yeah,
And
and
that's the
that's
sad part.
yeah. I feel fortunate that I could for the most part be myself. I think a lot of what was difficult and what my parents took on to teach me was how to be normal, right? So like it's not acceptable that I run to my mom and cry every time. Like I remember specific instances where she was like, "This is the last time that you get out of this, child group thing by crying and running." But at home that would have been fine. Crying and running to my mom.
Yeah.
I mean, she's not the most emotional person herself, but she would never be like, "You can't cry, don't cry." It's just certain situations in the public eye
Yeah.
taught me not to. And
To an extent, I almost feel like autistic people have to be taught how to create a public persona. Do you
yes.
feel like that's accurate?
Yeah, I do. I think, and I don't doubt that most parents or adults are coming from a place of concern. Like they want that child to be able to grow into an adult, and be able to function in society. And
Yeah,
they are probably unintentionally teaching children how to create that public persona, but it's not like taking a class and being able to
it's
take
not.
notes and refer back to it. It's a lot of don't do this, or how could you do this, or you should know better. And so you're just like, okay, well, I won't do that anymore. Or you shut down. Like I in school, even now, like I do online classes now, but I deal with selective mutism in school, like through high school and college the first time. I just would not talk in class. And thinking back, I think I realized, well, if I'm not allowed to cry, if I'm not allowed to show my frustration or have a tantrum, or I in preschool, I kicked my teacher, I did all kinds of things. I just shut down and I just didn't speak at all. And eventually, thoughts, my opinions in those situations went away. It wasn't even that I was suppressing something; it just nothing came to me. I just
Yeah,
didn't speak, and so that was my public persona. I guess it's better to be known as a shy kid than the kid that kicks their teacher. So,
that's crazy. Yeah, that's
yeah,
something I don't have a lot of experience with. I think I've had selective mutism maybe two or three times max in my entire life. I always had the opposite problem, hyperverbal, where like I will have straight up 6 paragraphs come to me in the span of 1 second, and I feel like I have to write it down. I have to get the information out there somehow. It's tough. It's tough because you probably didn't want to be known as the quiet kid if someone had been able to meet you where you were at and
yeah,
understand what was going on. And
yep,
instead of me being seen as anything other than the girl who talks a lot.
yeah. It would have been nice probably for you to be able to just express yourself. I mean, in my opinion, an expressive child sounds like an intelligent child. Like, I mean, you get to a certain point and you do that enough, and maybe you can do things like public speaking, or you can be like, speaking is writing, speaking is art, like letting children express themselves with minimal limits. It's like, okay, well, you do the talking stick thing, fine, but you should have been able to just express for as long as you needed to, and that should have been accepted because there's always going to be the kids like me who were happy to hear you talk and super interested, but had nothing to say themselves. So,
Yeah. And it was funny. It's funny you say that because I legitimately had a bunch of friends in elementary school who were considered the quiet kids. And looking back, I kind of wonder, like, were they also neurodivergent? Like, is that why we were friends?
very possibly. I mean,
One
we
of them
find each
confirmed it.
other.
One of them confirmed it, and I'm like, this is really,
Nice.
really funny. Like,
Yeah, I'm curious. I know I'm not interviewing you, but do you think that those friends, the quiet friends, while you were more expressive and more talkative, do you think you helped them find their voice? Like, do you think, because I know with me, when that happened, the quiet kid who gets with the kid that takes them kind of under their wing, or we just become friends, but they're like, they're themselves and they're open, that kind of inspired me to do it. And I was more comfortable around those people to open up.
I don't think she really was, but it was kind of an interesting thing where she would tell me, "Hey, XYZ," and then but she would tell me I don't want to say it in front of the whole class. So I would be like,
Uh,
"Oh, well, don't mind if I do. Let me just," you know, like
yeah.
she would ask
So you
me.
kind of were her
I kind
voice.
of helped her indirectly with that. Like, if she
Yeah.
was afraid to mention something, I wasn't afraid. Like, the entire class already hated me most of the time, so what did I have to lose? Nothing. If I was the tattletale, so be it. Like, I just didn't
Uh,
care anymore. I was like, I'm just gonna do what I'm gonna do.
absolutely. I think that's another unhealthy side effect of, how we're treated as children. But the benefit is you did just speak up for yourself. You also kind of learned can't care so much what other people think, or you literally will be in a rigid box and doing nothing.
Yeah, I had to give that up at like age 8
Yeah.
because the bullies were so bad. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I know that whatever they're saying is pure lies. Let's just ignore it. It was rough. School is so rough for so many autistic people. And the sad thing is, it's not even something that is even related to us at all. It is almost exclusively school's inability to give us the support we need or even protection that we need. In my case, I was physically abused by my peers and a lot of
Oh no.
for so long, literally for so long, and the bus driver just didn't care. Like,
Uh,
so these, I feel like marginalized groups and especially marginalized kids in school really need some kind of protection, at least a teacher that cares or something like that. And I also don't really understand how like I would eat lunch with the guidance counselor every day for like 2 years. How was that not a
yes.
flag, like, hey, maybe you're not neurotypical? Like, how did no one see that and suggest, hey, maybe you should get tested for autism? But this was
Yeah.
back in the early 2000s, and society just didn't even know what autism even was. We still don't,
Yeah.
but at least now it's a little bit more vocalized.
It is, and I am too. Like I've never worked in a capacity with children, but I feel like that's something I would have picked up on. And it's why didn't anyone? And maybe sometimes there were people behind the scenes, and maybe there were autistic or neurodivergent adults that did try to speak up, but they were shut down because they're also bullied by their peers. So it's just
One of my
we've
teachers I
gotta.
know for sure is undiagnosed, probably autistic, and she just she because she thought everything I was doing and saying was just normal. And it's that same problem
Oh.
again. Like, so you get support from the neurodivergent people, and but even then, whether you do or
Yeah.
not
Sometimes.
depends on whether how
Yeah.
accepting they are about themselves.
Yeah, and then, in that case, that's a beautiful example of a teacher recognizing that, then it's almost like they can't help you because they're like, "Nah, I'm done living behind the mask. I'm done, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm done basically saying these behaviors are unacceptable, so you're cool. Go about your business." But then,
Yeah.
yeah, you're still a kid and you need protection from the people that don't think that way, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have one last question for you. From being autistic, do you have any sensory issues? I think we've already talked a lot about the social issues that you kind of went through and that I also went through as well. But yeah, do you have sensory issues? Do you feel like ants are crawling up from your feet all the way to your head when you put on jeans or certain fabrics or anything like that?
Yeah, I stopped wearing jeans and pants like 10 years ago. I wear a lot of skirts and dresses, and I do like feminine things, so I don't want to say it's not from my femininity, but it's from the constriction.
Yep.
Skirts and dresses don't constrict me. But yeah, I wrote a little bit longer on this one, so I'll read it. I deal with a few sensory issues that I've become aware of. Though depending on the situation, I believe I suppress a lot of this. But basically, I can be both hypo and hypersensitive to certain things. These include bright fluorescent lights, which hurt me, night driving, and the glare associated with it are extremely difficult for me. I have misophonia,
Oh,
where
I'm
certain
sorry.
sounds like, yeah, chewing, cats cleaning themselves, certain crunching noises like boots and gravel, they really, really upset me. Like, my boyfriend was sitting down helping me with a homework assignment. He's chewing gum behind me, and I'm just like, and we have a relationship where I can say something, but he feels so bad. He's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I caused you pain," so that makes me not want to say anything. But I just really wanted to be like, "Stop."
Yeah, my
And
mom
also,
has that, and she had the same reaction when I used to be addicted to chewing gum. It would drive her insane. She would like straight up yell for like an hour, like stop the chewing near my ears, and I didn't know what the heck the problem was. And then like years later, I found out about misophonia, and I was like, oh, that's what it is.
yes.
So it wasn't something that was triggered by something else. She actually had really bad sensitivities to certain sounds.
Absolutely. And there's a balance. Like I try to recognize it's me and it's not other people because I chew and I'm sure I make the same noises. I also find that like if I'm eating with someone and I'm eating at the same time, it doesn't bother me as much because literally the noises in my mouth are blocking theirs. Or if there's TV on or music on. So I find ways to like I don't want to make every single person that chews around me or God forbid a cat that's cleaning themselves around
Cat.
me leave. A cat would not appreciate it. But yeah, and then I also have poor connection to bodily sensations, hunger cues. So for me, that means not noticing when I overeat, also not always being familiar when I'm hungry. Also, nausea, strong pain, they are easier for me to detect. I do tend to be able to suppress certain levels of pain. So, like, I've noticed it more lately where it's like, yeah, my back hurts or my stomach hurts, but I'm just not going to think about it
Yeah.
and it goes away, which probably is why, like, as I get older, I have more and more health issues. It's very common for autistic people to have digestive and gastrointestinal issues. I found
Yeah.
out yeah, my primary care doctor, she wants to test me for sleep apnea, and I'm actually doing the at-home test this weekend. My therapist, when I met with her last week, she was like, "Oh yeah, sleep apnea is very common in autistic people." So it's
Well,
like,
that's news to
yeah,
me.
me
Thank you
too.
for mentioning that because I didn't know that. And thanks for telling all the viewers of this podcast that too.
Absolutely. And oftentimes the person that has it doesn't know they have it. So if you have a partner or a family member, or you can record yourself, oftentimes it's loud snoring, but it's not just snoring. It's at certain times it's like you're gasping and choking for air, and it's just because your airway is, I believe, not lined up right, and you literally, your brain has to wake up out of sleep and remind you to breathe, which is terrible for sleep quality, which also
Damn.
affects things like anxiety, depression.
That's rough. I'm
um
sorry you deal with that.
yeah, I if it wasn't for my boyfriend, I wouldn't know, but I'm really hopeful. There's treatment. There's, like, you can get devices to put on your jaw, or there's the CPAP machine which helps open up your airway. So from my research, people are like, once they get treated for it, it's like night and day. They're like, I had no idea how badly I was sleeping, and I'm always dealing with brain fog and just, so I'm hoping that's something that can help.
Yeah, I hope it helps you. I hope you find the solutions you're looking for.
Thank you. Yeah. And then the last little part, I said alexithymia. I definitely struggle to identify emotions and other internal reactions when they're first occurring. If they get bad enough that I'm pretty close to meltdown, then I'm aware at least that something is wrong, but maybe not the cause.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you ever like
and
feel
then,
an emotion and then 2 hours later you're like, oh, that was anxiety?
yeah, I am terrible about. So
Yeah.
I only notice anxiety from the physical symptoms, like heart racing, heart palpitations, stomach clenching. My therapist was talking to me about how anxiety literally may not be true anxiety. It may have developed out of suppressed emotions, specifically anger. And I don't know,
Yep.
other autistic women or just people with the more introverted type of autism. Anger is like something that you probably expressed as a child, but now, like for me at least, if I do express it, it's a huge, like, it's built up, and it's a meltdown. But
Yeah.
he thinks that, like, yeah, sometimes these emotions that we aren't able to recognize or address then become, physical symptoms or things like anxiety that is more recognized, but being treated for anxiety isn't always being treated for the root cause. It's being treated for the symptoms. So
Yeah. And especially with alexithymia, like I thought for 26 years that I had never experienced anxiety. I genuinely thought that. And
yeah,
turns out it was I actually had and I have a diagnosed anxiety disorder. And it
yes,
has only become that because of being autistic in a society that's mostly not accommodating.
yes. And
That's
I think
literally
that
it.
a lot of autistic people, just like we develop our mask, we also lose the ability, or not lose, but even if as a child you didn't know it was called anxiety, something was wrong. But we're
And I
used
would
to,
have never, I'd never even picked up on it. I would just,
exactly, we're,
it felt like meltdowns were out of nowhere. And
yep,
they were pretty rare for me because I got so good at suppressing it, which was really
yes,
unhealthy.
exactly. And so we develop mental health disorders. And I think that is because we're so used to not trying to, even if it takes work, if you have to sit down and write it out, and you can't just say I'm angry like a neurotypical person might. We don't do that, and so we carry it around, and it's one of those things where we're like, it's just normal. I thought everyone did this, and
Yeah.
it's not normal. It's not healthy.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's tough, especially if you can't identify what emotion you're feeling. Someone's like, "How are you feeling?" Hell if I know. I mean, honestly, how would I even know? So you get used to
Yeah.
almost masking how you're feeling because in the moment you just don't even know.
Yep.
And then that's when
That's
all
the
this
social script.
the
It's
the
like, how are you
social
doing? I'm
script.
fine. You're crying. I'm fine.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, exactly.
yeah.
I found out recently you don't even have to respond to that. Actually, you like if someone says how are you can just say how are you right back, and they won't even
Yeah.
like no one
Doesn't
even
mean
recognizes. Oh wait, they didn't answer. No one cares.
yeah, it doesn't mean what it means, which is
Yeah.
it's infuriating. I'm actually having some trouble at my current job, but good news, I got an offer for a job today.
Nice.
So
Congratulations.
yeah, I'll be putting in my notice tomorrow. But it's not been going well at my current job because my boss was like, "Yeah, push back," because we're dealing with insane turnover, just like a lot of places are, and it's just stressful. My
Yeah.
boss was like, "Push back," and I took that literally. So I'm sitting there telling them all the problems of the system, and I'm in trouble. I'm like getting special one-on-one meetings, and
Jeez.
it's horrible. I'm so glad to be out of there, but again, I guess he didn't mean to push
Yeah,
back. So,
of course not. Like when upper management asks for feedback, turns out they don't actually want it.
yeah.
When I left my last job, I was like, yeah, so here's all like I'm leaving for XYZ reasons. This one, this one, this one, this one. Here's my list of suggestions to upper management of things that they really should be doing that they're not doing. And I gave them all the feedback and yeah, they did not like that.
No, they don't.
Because people hear feedback and just immediately think you're targeting their entire identity. And that's the difference, another difference between neurotypical and autistic people. Like, if you tell me I don't think your song is good, I'd be like, okay, how can I make it better? Cool. Like, you don't like this song, maybe you'll like this other song better. Like, to me, it's a neutral thing. Like, your preference did not align with this song that I created, but maybe another song I create would. But if you were to tell, like, a neurotypical person, I don't like your purse, it's almost as if you are insulting them as a person.
And not only that, and some of them even internalize it and will now
Never
stop
use
liking the
purses
purse.
or never
Yeah.
use that purse. Exactly, yeah.
It's like, what? The thing that you like, you're gonna give up because one person doesn't like it? Like,
If,
what?
yeah. To some
Yeah.
extent, I think that's something that has helped us as autistic people because if someone says I don't like you, it's like, okay, you and the other 400
Yes.
people join the club.
Get in
Like
line.
it,
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter. It's like, okay, I don't really care. You're just one other random person. But if it's like for neurotypical people, that would be way worse because then all the assumptions that we're not making come into play.
Yeah.
We're not going to assume if someone says I don't like you, we're just going to take it at face value. Okay, I don't like you, our personalities are incompatible or whatever, like basic face level. But for a neurotypical person, if you said that to them, that would be like the equivalent of you're a piece of shit or something
Yes.
like way worse because of all the assumptions that go into that play into that.
Yeah. And I think that's a downside from the neurotypical person perspective. But going back to what you said, how you listed all the issues and you gave suggestions. That's a societal loss right there where like people pay consultants. Like we're pretty observant people. I'm not gonna say
Honestly.
we're perfect. A lot of times if we're telling you this is the issue and you should try this, at least try it before you say, "Oh, how dare you critique it?" because that was free consulting for them.
Exactly,
But
especially if 27 people left the team in the last 3 months. There's probably a reason for it.
yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
autistic people are going to tell you straight up this is the problem. But
Yes.
but most neurotypical people don't like to hear that because then that is challenging their entire identity.
Yes. It's
It's such a
it's
challenge
insane.
because from our perspective, we're presenting totally neutral information. And then all of that neutral information gets assigned a subtext, one that we can't control. And this happens at such a subconscious level that most people
Yes.
don't even know they're doing it.
And it is a huge loss.
It
If
is.
we cared to better and not just make certain people richer, but I won't go on a rant about that. If we cared to better society, that's a huge loss. Like that, just think of all the autistic people in all aspects and fields of life
Yeah,
that
like
could offer that.
even looking
And
at a
it's just,
career standpoint, the majority of
yes,
autistic people are unemployed.
yes, unemployed, underemployed.
Uh,
Yes,
yeah, or underpaid. It's just, it's
yeah,
absurd. It's ridiculous. It's like, so you're going to take the people who might actually potentially be geniuses in a particular area and not give them accommodations? It just doesn't make any sense.
this is my advice to all CEOs out there. Find your autistic people in your organization, make them consultants, leave them alone, triple their pay. I promise you will see improvements. But of course, they won't do that because it's like, oh no, they don't deserve to be paid well. It's we people who waste time and just react emotionally and just no,
Honestly,
this
to
person
some
isn't
extent,
allowed to.
like you're definitely right to some extent because social niceties pay. If you're the
Yes,
kind of person who
yes,
talks to everyone in your office, everyone knows that you're going to be a nice person and they're not going to want to fire you. But if you're an autistic person who is, hyper focused on, I don't know, actually doing your job,
yeah,
then you get feedback like, "Oh, you look unfocused and uninterested in your position. It is clear that you don't care." Like, clear to who? Clear to who?
yeah.
It's clear
I
to me
literally
that you
got
have
an email.
ableism. Like, seriously.
I got an email, like, I don't even care. I'm leaving this job. I got an email last week basically saying, at first, I was impassioned. I was like, these are the issues. This is why we're losing all the good people. And it got to the point where it was probably disrespectful, but I was just so angry because we spent months going in circles about how we're going to fix these issues, and they're not doing anything. So I stopped that. I was like, I'm getting myself heated. I really shouldn't care that much. I'm trying to get out. Then my next approach was just to answer yes, no, I don't know. And so I was neutral, flat affect, just yes, no, I'm not sure, I don't know. And I got a long email which I have my boyfriend read it. It doesn't make sense to me. One thing I kind of took out that I like didn't seem like corporate speak was I've noticed a lot of times when I ask you questions, you just say I don't know, and that doesn't represent the core values of our company, like teamwork. And I'm just like,
Yeah, because they want you to lie and give some bullshit answer even though you don't know.
yeah, and I literally was thinking in my head, like, so, like, having conversations with my boss. So, how would you like me to convey to you that I don't have the information? Since I'm not allowed to say I don't know anymore, do you want me to lie? I'm not going to lie because then if I lie, it's wrong or it causes an issue. I'm then held responsible. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not stupid. I know that what he's looking for is a reason for it to be on me and not him because he's also overwhelmed. It's like I was giving good advice. I
Yeah.
was saying be kinder to people, hire people.
Be
Like,
kinder to people.
yes, like he came in, he was like, I'm with the military. I was in the military and I run a tight ship, and I'm like, military people get like court-martialed if they leave, and in the corporate world, people just leave. So that's not a good way. And sure enough, we've just continued to lose people, and I get heated about this, but I think, and my boss was saying, it's the injustice of it all. My work, my actual work, I don't mind. I could do it for the rest of my life. It's just bookkeeping. It's I probably could push myself and move up, but I like being in the lower roles only because I feel there's less social expectations, less schmoozing, and
Yeah.
all that, the niceties. But even at like the lowest roles, the underpaid roles, they sometimes just hound you, and that's when I just can't take it, and I start doing worse emotionally and mentally, and I have to leave. And so that's where I am again, but I'm glad to get out of this last fiasco.
Yeah, it's tough. I bet him saying that he probably wanted you to list your recommendations in a way that he would interpret correctly. But that's the problem. We say something that we
Yeah,
think is neutral, and then people lose their minds over it from an assigned negative subtext that we can't even see.
correct.
And that's just
And
really
then it's
frustrating to deal with all the time because you don't make these assumptions, but everyone else does. So then you're like, wait, how do I have to phrase this? What do I have to say differently? And it's very easy to get trapped in the rejection rabbit hole in that way.
yeah,
Like, oh, I guess I'm not good at communicating. I'm not good at talking. I'm not good at listening
yes.
because of neurodivergence making it hard to do all those things.
Yeah. I think, yeah, I was feeling like it's like I can't win. No matter what I do, there's still a complaint. There's still something I'm doing wrong. And that is tough. Like, even as a person who is more aware that, I have to mask and I have to fake it, when I'm doing my best, even at that, and I'm still getting negative feedback, that's when I'm like, okay, I'm out of suggestions. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know
seriously.
what else to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing all your experiences. I really appreciate it. And do you have any last thing that you'd like to share for this episode?
I'm a bleeding heart. I say to all autistic people, all neurodivergent people, especially the ones that have trouble getting diagnosed or who aren't believed, like, we're out here, we're all together separately in our own homes usually, but there are resources for us. This is one of those resources. I literally, I'm so excited to listen to future episodes, and I encourage every autistic creator, content creator, get out there, share your stuff. Don't feel like I know, there are more and more autistic people on social media and media, but I say until there's as much representation of us as there is of neurotypical people, there's a space for everyone.
Definitely.
And I'm so excited to have been able to be a part of this. And yes, I'm rooting for you. Thank you for doing this podcast.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Thanks for sharing your experiences and ideas and opinions. I really hope that I get to continue to do interviews with other people. And also, I wanted to let you know, if you know anyone who wants to interview, feel free to reach out to me. I'm always looking for different types of people to interview. And I think it's important to be able to hear different voices, because if it's just my voice, I only have one lived experience. But if I am talking and listening to other people's experiences, then a more concrete picture comes into mind of what does autism look like. And, I honestly bet any neurotypical person who's listening right now has probably never heard an entire conversation between two autistic people.
Yeah,
And
they're
it
lost.
might come as a surprise, honestly,
Yeah.
because most neurotypical people just think autism is Down syndrome, or
Yeah.
or think that you're basically Sheldon Cooper from The Big Bang Theory, which is also inaccurate. So it's
Yes.
really awesome. I'm so happy to be able to have you on this podcast and to be able to have some more women representation as well, because that's another
Absolutely.
aspect that is so seldomly studied. So
Yeah,
thank
we're
you.
overlooked a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, especially medically and all of that. Not
Yes.
going to get into that. That's a long episode.
Yeah. Maybe you could speak with an autistic or neurodivergent medical professional. I would love to. Like, I don't know anyone. If I
I have a
find
contact where I
anyone.
could do that,
Oh, nice.
actually, but she's
Yeah.
neurotypical, but she studies autism
Okay.
and ADHD extensively, and I chat with her every week pretty much, and we exchange resources and neuroscience information and all that. She's an incredible contact, so probably at some point I will have her on this podcast just to share what she's been doing.
Very nice. I'm looking forward to that episode.
Thank you so much, Melissa.
Really, thank
Thanks
you.
for joining, and I hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful weekend.
You too. Have a good one. Have a good week going into next week. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.